from the fruit. All my trying to be normal has just proved too hard to do. It's easy to say that the cross is at the front when the bookends are so violent compared to the selfless son. But I've tried to be, and I've tried to see like him. I'm glad it's not my fate that I've seen your face, 'cause that's slim. Like Eli said, I wish I didn't care. I've been trying to understand you, but it just seems like you aren't there. I contradict. I'm a walking yes and no. I say that I am either, 'cause I identify with both. But I've tried to be, and I've tried to see like him. I'm glad it's not.
Hello. I was just trying to tweet out that we were live, but yeah, we're another episode of Apocalypse here. But no, this isn't really an episode of the podcast. We're just kind of, me and John were just talking about stuff, and we figured might as well go live, see if people have any questions, maybe related to our episode yesterday, or really anything else related to theology or biblical studies, stuff we talk about on this channel. And yeah, we have a few things we can talk about too if nobody's in the chat or anything. But yeah, we just wanted to kind of hop on it because we're talking about this stuff and maybe some other people are interested. Yeah, I see Travis in the chat. So we got some people, but yeah, this is sort of a last minute thing. So we haven't done anything. I don't know if you want to say anything right at the top. I'm going to just copy this link and actually tweet this out.
No, you're good. Yeah, I thought yesterday's podcast, which we did live and then like we normally do, re-upload it after doing a bit of editing. I tried to keep this less edited just because Laura had a lot to say sort of consistently throughout that was really important. So I didn't want to kind of chop it up in the way that I normally edit stuff. So, but yeah, I thought it went well. I'll be curious to see the response if there is any from David and others possibly. But yeah, I thought it went well. I thought it was a good.
Yeah, for sure.
Good stream. So
totally agree. I always I feel like when we get Laura on, it kind of takes us up a notch, whatever. We kind of agree with, I don't know, I feel like she offers definitely a different perspective.
Well, yeah, helpful. I mean, when we're going into sort of critical scholarship stuff, she's, I'm lucky to live with a resident biblical scholar, myself not having a PhD, but having certain interests in research and future publications in New Testament, but
for sure, yeah, I mean,
not the same calibers.
Yeah, as far as theology and stuff goes, I feel like we have really great conversations. But yeah, as far as the actually really engaging with the critical scholarship, it's just the familiarity with the field, I think, is what is the big difference. Yeah, for sure, which really helps. And I think
leave Math Pig.
Yeah, I haven't talked to Math Pig in a while, but hope you're doing well. Haven't talked to many people online in a while.
Yeah.
But
good to see you here.
Yeah.
Jesse camping in there. Jonathan Becker's back. Another stream.
Nice.
Not going to be as exciting as last night.
Yeah, for sure. Unless maybe somebody asks some really good questions. Who knows? Maybe
yeah. And also, speaking of asking good questions, Jonathan asked some great questions last night. So
for sure. I appreciate that.
Good on you.
Yeah. I always appreciate it when you can tell people are following along in the chat. It feels good that people actually are paying attention and care about what we have to say.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. And so I don't know. Me and John, we had one topic we kind of wanted to talk about that we haven't really.
Sorry.
Oh God, what's he? Yeah, I mean that's fine. You can go ahead.
Aggravating
and
us is fine.
Yeah.
I don't think you can do anything to actually aggravate us, JB.
No.
But it's good to see you here, friend.
Yeah, you're not a Christian apologist, so you know.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, but we were talking before this that maybe we could touch on just like some of our thoughts on like because we talk about universalism all the time, but just to touch on kind of like why we don't think annihilationism is necessarily a better solution than universalism, or just kind of I guess we can kind of just touch on some of our thoughts on annihilationism and just kind of see where it goes from there, because I do think it's definitely like just right off the bat, it's definitely an important thing to touch on, because I do think like as far as an exegetical argument or whatever, like annihilationism, there is a very strong case to be made. And even like me and John talk about, like I'm not exactly sure where I fall on this, but I know John like thinks Paul was probably an annihilationist early on.
Yeah.
And kind of shifted his thought.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean I tend to agree. Yeah. So it's definitely an important thing to think about. But yeah, so maybe we can just kind of touch on some.
Yeah, I can frame it in a certain way. So, the way that this runs tends to be, okay, annihilationists and universalists can agree that the sort of traditionalist view, which is ECT, eternal conscious torment, is problematic. It doesn't have good textual basis. It is highly incoherent as a model of judgment and also eschatology, right? We can agree on that. What tends to happen, though, is that annihilationism becomes viewed as kind of a better option than ECT because you're not being tormented for eternity. So it looks a little better on the face of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not being sent to an eternal torture chamber. You're just wiped out. You're gone. And it's conditioned upon being involved with Christ, right? Everyone who's not involved with Christ gets wiped out, right? But is that really a better picture? Is the question that I think about a lot. And I know that you've tweeted about this a couple of times, Ethan, as on this stuff. But you and I have never really had a conversation about this. So I'd be curious to kind of initially get your thoughts about like, okay, if let's presume that ECT is just off the table. We have annihilationism, we have universalism, right? What's wrong with this picture of annihilationism then? Is it really a better picture than ECT? Is it still problematic in some ways? So
so I guess for me the way it goes, like the way I think about these things, like on just like a big picture like thing, kind of like way my mind goes, it's like, okay, well, trying to figure out like what's going on, like ECT, annihilationism, or universalism. Like I think in order to, and we'll just say like infernalism or whatever, to like kind of lump the two not universalism together, in order to go with either one of the infernalism ideas is going to rely on a form of free will that, for me, that like people honestly can reject God forever. And so then my mind goes to, well, if that's the case, if the only way we can get away from universalism is with this account of free will, then annihilationism seems to imply that like God gives up at some point and it's just too far gone. You're just annihilated. And I don't see any, like, that doesn't make any sense to me at all. Like, because that just seems that like God created someone and then just eventually gave up on them. And I don't see where that goes. So that leads me to ECT being like the only one that like coherently makes sense, but then there's so many arguments against eternal conscious torment that like it just doesn't work. And I don't believe that account of free will makes any sense. I mean, that's the main thing that drives me towards universalism is my understanding of free will and like what even it means to be human. So like I just don't I don't see annihilationism. Like I guess the only like reason it seems to be better is because like at least you're putting that person out of their misery. But yeah, I just don't see that as being I don't know. It just doesn't do it.
Those are good thoughts. I think for me, what it comes down to is some of the same issues with ECT is like this seems to call into question the goodness of God and also the unconditional love of God as revealed in Christ. So if God is going to annihilate, because God is the one actively annihilating people on this model, right? It's not just some sort of other, it's not like a nuclear bomb comes down and annihilates certain people. God is actively doing this to people to wipe out certain parts of his creation. And for me, in my understanding of creation and eschatology, if God were to annihilate or remove certain parts of what God has created, number one, creation isn't really a thing because creation is only ever fulfilled eschatologically. So there's no real creation at any point. This compromises the love of God because how could a good and loving father annihilate or wipe out a child, one of God's children? And if you want to make the move that like, certain people have chosen to sort of devolve into evil such that they become ex-human or kind of subhuman in that they sort of like turn in on themselves so much that they're no longer human. That's not really a solution here either. That's impossible if they're image bearers. You can't just sort of lose your what made you exist in the first place. That's an impossibility. There's a logical contradiction there, right in the middle of it. So because I have a tight connection between creation and eschatology, creation and fulfillment of God's creation in the eschaton, it strikes me as odd that there would be a situation where God would remove some part of humanity, because this is sort of ancient patristic kind of thinking. Humanity is a single body. You can't just sort of remove stuff out of it and expect it to continue being the same sort of thing. We're all connected to each other by virtue of being God's creation. So you still run into the same problems of relationality, like we would talk about with ECT as well. Like, am I annihilated partially? If I'm in heaven and my spouse gets annihilated, like I would have to be. What does that even mean at that point? It's nonsense, right? So you still have some of those same issues. So it's I don't want to kind of compare the ECT and annihilationism in terms of like which one's worse. They're both pretty bad because of those precise reasons. So that's kind of where my thinking goes.
Yeah, for sure. And it seems like, like whenever I do put my like infernalist hat on, like it seems to me that like some form of annihilationism where God like continually holds his hand out with like an offer, but people just never take it, seems to be the only like way to make sense of it.
Right.
But
that's not what we think agency or freedom actually is, right?
Exactly.
Because from where we're coming from, because we have a conception of creation, I mean, all of the cosmos being constrained, the solution to that is not offering. It's not like it would effectively be like there are children stuck in a cave. And a rescue operation comes down and they just reach out their hand part way and they're like, are you going to make your way to me or what? And then they just sort of give up on them and they, pass away. Or is the solution, the rescue team goes all the way through, grabs them, brings them all the way back up. That seems to make more sense of what is actually going on with the plight of people and the like by way of analogy, the cosmos. So if there isn't a rescue operation going on where God comes all the way down and draws us all the way back, then yeah, it's a weak solution. It's not radical enough. We need God to come all the way down and all the way back up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that analogy is like really great because like you can even see kind of how absurd that is. If like somebody went all the way down, like grabbed the person, you know, like you heard them on their radio or whatever, like I got them, and then like they come out all by themselves, and you're like, what happened? And they're like, oh, the person said they wanted to stay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, oh, like, and everybody's just like, okay,
like,
would you
think of that as a successful rescue operation?
Yeah, no. Like, good job, buddy.
That person would have failed at their
coerce them into coming, you know, like, oh no, that person said they were good.
Yeah.
Like, it's clear that the person saying that, like, there's something wrong there if they're not.
Right.
And that's just kind of obvious, you know. I don't know why that doesn't get applied to the way people think about hell, but
and like I didn't really draw this out, but you do have the issue of love there as well. Does a loving parent annihilate their children in any meaningful sense that we would use the term loving? The answer is no, right? If you want to say that God does that because God is on a different plane of, I guess, what it means for God to be good, then it's like, okay, yeah, God's transcendent, God is out there, all that sort of stuff, but there has to be some sort of analogical relation there. Like God's love can't be something sort of opposite of what we mean by love, or something other fundamentally than what we mean by love. Otherwise, we can't even talk about love and God's love.
Yeah, we touched on that in one of our podcasts.
It's the as David Bentley Hart talks about it, it's the problem of equivocity.
Yeah.
Everything becomes equivocal. We can't talk about God. We're just speaking essentially nonsense when we use words like good or love or just. Those related, really important terms for God. So, yeah, same problems seem to come up with annihilationism. It seems a little kinder, but it's just not.
Yeah, I just don't think it actually solves any of the issues that are.
It's still conditional. It's still contractual. It's still. I mean, you run into all of those sorts of philosophical and theological issues as well, because it's still dependent upon something you do and that you assent to, right? Which doesn't really make much sense with the God of grace.
Yeah, totally agree. But we got a decent amount of questions so far. I'm sure if we
let's see.
Start going through them, we'll get some more. Yeah. First one might have been Jonathan Becker. Oh, yeah, maybe that was first, actually. Yeah.
He's not highlighted very much in pop level circles. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I think like the issue with like top academic scholarship. I mean, I definitely see. Yeah, I mean, there's like that's kind of why we do what we do.
Yeah.
So hopefully bring some of these ideas down. There are a lot of people. I mean, a decent amount of people.
Yeah, even in the time that you and I have been doing stuff online, you before me, but like there've been more kind of pop level channels that are having on really, really high level scholars. I mean, one of them that comes to mind is Derek at Myth Vision. Like he has some, I mean, besides some of the sketchier folks that he's had on, I mean, he's had Paula Fredrickson, he's had
Dale Allison a bunch of times.
Dale Allison, he's had Mark Goodacre, he's had,
Collins. What's his first name?
John Collins.
Yeah, John Collins. Yeah, a few times.
He's had so many on, and like that's great. So I think it's getting better. Both, I think. I don't want to speak out of turn, really. It's happening more on the non-Christian side, it seems like. A lot of the time. The non-apologetic Christian side, because I do think they're, at least I would hope that like our channel is bringing on some high-level folks as well,
and the information from pretty high-level folks,
absolutely,
even if we're not actually talking with the people themselves,
for sure. But do you agree with that?
Yeah. Even like someone like Dan McClellan,
Yeah.
And he's gotten pretty popular, and he's really good about actually like, bringing actual scholarship to the conversation.
Yeah.
But yeah. I mean, I'm hopefully see more, and I think people like. I mean, there's a reason why you see it on like the non-apologetics end, though, because it tends to disagree with most things apologists want to say. As John like goes into the void for a second when you turn your screen off.
Sorry.
No, you're good. When your screen went dark or whatever, you were like, it's completely black on your face.
Weird.
But
okay. Jonathan Becker,
yeah.
either of y'all have any thoughts on the connection that's made between Paul's weirder practices and divination?
Curious if you have anything about this. I don't know.
I actually don't know Jennifer's work. So if you want to send me something about that would be great.
Yeah, I'm writing the name down. Just
or like explain it a bit more. Paul's weirder practices and divination. I know what divination means, but what connection that means to Paul's weirder practices, I'm not sure. But interesting question.
Yeah, what do you think he's referring to as far as divination? Like, I mean, is it just like theosis type idea or whatever? Like,
no, that's divinization. So I think divination is referring to sort of a way of. I mean, my understanding of divination is a way of sort of like predicting kind of future events or something like this, some sort of practices that allow you to sort of see into certain realities or spaces or futures that we can't normally see.
Like Chris Angel Mind Freak.
It's like Chris Angel Mind Freak. Yeah, exactly. Good point.
I'd bring him up on this.
That's hilarious.
I don't know why that popped in my head, but
thoughts on theological inclusivism? I probably misspelled it, but yeah, LOL.
Yeah,
it right?
Yeah, me and John have actually considered doing a podcast on this. I've brought it up a time or two, so this would be a decent thing just to kind of give a few thoughts on or whatever. I tend to, I don't know, maybe I can kind of set it up a little bit, because it's interesting too when I brought it up to John, because you're not like being on like the spaces you engage with or whatever. This isn't really a topic that gets brought up in this way, like in the way people tend to think about it. So it's kind of like the difference between exclusivism, where like exclusivism is going to just be like people have to be explicitly Christian in order to be saved, and inclusivism tends to be that, like, people that have never heard the gospel that live on like a remote island can still be saved. Kind of Romans 1 style. They kind of understand that God exists by looking at the world and whatnot. And I just like, that part, once you get to that, I obviously disagree, because I really disagree with that understanding of sort of natural theology.
Because no one gets saved Romans 1 style.
Yeah.
As Paul goes on to say in Romans 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
No one gets saved that way. You'll have to wait for my book on that. Or read Douglas Campbell's big book. But no one gets saved that way. I do... Continue on, Ethan. Sorry.
Yeah, I just want to, like, I think if we do have this conversation on the podcast, what we can pull in and we plan on talking about too is just that, like, sermon or lecture, whatever you want to call it, by Rowan Williams that we listened to a while back about like the finality of Christ, or it's called, and it just really leads to this just sort of like different strokes for different folks idea, kind of like, some people can get saved this way and some people get saved this way, and I just disagree with. I think that kind of falls apart because it just leads to so many like weird conundrums about like, did you actually like send someone to hell by telling them, like, were they better off in their ignorance? It kind of leads to weird things that and it just leads to this idea that I don't think is really supported, especially in Paul, that like they're like the idea of this like invisible church or whatever, like certain like that we can never actually know like who's a part, like who's saved and who's not saved and all this kind of stuff. I think that it just leads to like some weird thinking in that way. I understand why people go there, because I do also agree with some of the like lines of thinking that lead people to inclusivism. Like I definitely think that like some people know Jesus even though they never heard the name. You know what I mean? Like, I do think God is love, and God is like the truth of all truth, you know, so like I'm fine with that. I just don't, I guess when it gets like the soteriological understanding of it is where I get off the boat. But it also, because I'm a universalist, I think you can make more sense of everyone saved in the exact same way type idea.
And that's what we would talk about as inclusive, right? Is that it's exclusively inclusive, to put it in a sort of paradoxical way, because what we think is that, you know, all things are reconciled and healed through one person, and by the power of the Holy Spirit. But it's everything. That's at that very same time. It's particular, it's exclusive, but it's also inclusive of everybody and everything, because this envisions everyone ultimately responding to that person, whatever that's going to look like. And so there's an inclusive nature to that, because we don't really know exactly how everyone's going to respond in the future, because we're not there yet. It could take different forms. We're not sure. But the point is that everyone ultimately will respond and be reconciled and healed. So I would call myself an exclusivist inclusivist, if we want to use those terms, or just a good old Christian universalist in that way. So I hope that's helpful in terms of
maybe
trying to kind of use that language and also put it in a different kind of register as well.
No, I think that's perfect.
Magnum opus. Thoughts on Yahweh's origins? Something supernatural, a more evolutionary view like Mark Smith's, some combo of both. You know, I just don't know. I'm not well read on this stuff, to be honest.
That's kind of where I'm at.
I don't
blame
know,
John for not getting me interested in any of this stuff. Anytime I try and like start studying something different, I feel like we get like sidetracked, and I just like read the first chapter.
I mean, it's all very interesting stuff, and I would say try to find the best sort of ancient Near Eastern scholars and Old Testament scholars who were talking about this sort of stuff, and read those, kind of put them side by side. What are they saying? What are the claims being made? What are the arguments? And I don't really have any problems per se with Yahweh having origins prior to the writings of the Old Testament. I don't really care that much about that. It's not gonna do much. Yahweh as a sort of character within the biblical story. It's all interesting stuff. It really is really interesting stuff. I just don't know enough about it to comment about, like, if I think it's actually something supernatural. Well, I don't know. I'm not sure about this evolutionary view exactly. But yeah, find some good ancient Near Eastern scholars. I wish I could help you out here, but
yeah. Got too obsessed with Paul.
Yeah, spent too much time on that. Let's see.
Oh, this one with Jonathan Becker about the Gospels and Paul. Any
thoughts on whether the Gospels show awareness of Paul's writing / theology? If so, does that inform the synoptic problem debate at all? There's a case that some make that Mark is aware of Paul, and it is positively kind of using Pauline theology. I believe Joe Marcus has an article on this. I just don't know. There's potential that Matthew is in some way, with his emphasis on Torah and its positive role within the faith, is responding to Paul's kind of more ambivalent kind of use of the Torah. And Paul situates it in a way that, like, you don't have to follow Torah to be a Christian, right? For Matthew, I think you kind of do. So there could be
like a response.
There could be a case to be made that Matthew's actually responding to some kind of Pauline theology. Is it Paul's letters? I don't know.
Okay.
It could be some people some Paulinists running around in communities that someone like Matthew might be unhappy with. That connection is, I mean, it's so speculative. I don't know if you can even make the case in terms of its relation to the synoptic problem debate. I don't see it as being relevant unless you can make a strong case that Mark is not just aware of Paul, but actively using Paul, and that Matthew is aware of Mark's use of Paul, if we want to do Mark in priority, and also is responding to, it seems like, either what Mark's pulling through from Paul or has some access to other Paulinists that are running around at the same time, whether it's through text or whatever. That's going to be a hard case to make, but that's a great question. I mean, it's I'm just not sure.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting for sure, but yeah, I think pulling that all the way through to like inform the synoptic problem seems it seems like it could, no matter how you dice it up, it could kind of still go either way. Or, I don't see how the use of Paul could really give an order, unless, like you say, you make a really strong case that like Matthew is responding to Mark's use of Paul, would be an argument for Mark in priority. But yeah, I mean, Matthew responding to Mark is an argument for Mark in priority. So it seems just you're complicating things by adding that in.
Hey, John, Ethan said, oh, God, you had a cool view of Romans 5.
You have a good explanation of Romans 5:12.
Debate.
I always
say about it, and would love to have you on my channel sometime. Yeah, that'd be fun. I don't remember what I said.
It's just the whole idea of like the
Did I say it in passing or something?
No, you'll know what I'm talking about. Like the whole Romans 5:12 about like sin or death from sin or whatever, and like that's part of like a larger case that Paul's making in Romans 5, and not this like one-off point that like young earth creationists want to pull through, that like no one died before Adam and Eve or whatever.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, yeah, this connects to just what Paul is doing with death, right?
That's what I'm saying.
Is that, yeah, I mean, Paul's a kind of death. I mean, we've got another good death scholar on here, the handsome Nick Quint, who agrees with me on, I think for Paul, the principal problem is death for him, because he's giving a gospel of life in resurrection. So the whole point in Romans is not like, it's not about what the Genesis debate is about. It's just that death has become a force that's ruling the cosmos, and that what needs to happen in response to that is new life. Death needs to end definitively in the crucifixion and death of Jesus, burial. And then resurrection needs to happen on the other side, and that's what happens. And then everyone gets justified. Yes. Great. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. So to read this as talking about something to do with the sort of weird Genesis debates that I have no interest in. And yeah, the annihilation of death via resurrection. I think the annihilation of death is connected to resurrection. I think it happens in Christ's execution, principally. You have the death of death. You have the annihilation of Christ's flesh at that point. That's when death dies. Not finally, because when death dies is when we finally get the Soma Pneumaticon at the end of the age. Okay? Right? But it does die there, and then the resurrection is the deliverance out of a situation of death and decay. And that whole construct that has been destroyed at that point, which is death, gets overcome and we're pulled out of it into a new life where we're freed from death, flesh, sin, curse, all of the associated powers. I've talked about this so many times. As you know, I feel like I'm a broken record when I'm talking about this, but it's also just so important because this is exactly what Paul is doing most of the time when he's talking about the gospel. So yeah, on Romans 5, that's where I would go. It has nothing to do with the Genesis debates at all. Paul talks about Adam, but he's using Adam for this theological purpose. It has nothing to do with whether or not Paul thinks there's a historical Adam. Paul is talking about Adam in this story to talk about death. As Nick was saying, Romans 5 is all about the introduction of death into God's cosmos. That's it. Okay.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, Adam is the antitype. Christ is the type. Yes. Christ is superior and comes first. Right? That's right. All right.
Yeah, I know you've used like the idea of like
the coins stamp.
The coins. Yeah. Yeah, I was reading Jonathan Becker's thing, but I don't. Yeah, interesting. There's that one. How do you read the different passages about divorce in the Gospels and Paul, and how do they inform your personal views about divorce? I think this is like just a bigger kind of conversation about ethics in general and like how we would even approach a topic like this. I just don't take this view. And we did a whole podcast on this where I think we did a pretty good job of kind of explaining our views, and just like we don't really take this idea that like we can pull like these specific rules through the text. It's more of like a big picture kind of apocalyptic liberating understanding of ethics, and when there's ever anything leads to people being oppressed or hurt or damaged, then that's obviously a bad thing. And anytime there's liberation to actual freedom and good, like flourishing life, then that's a good thing. So
and that's the lens through which we read text. So I mean, we could go through the gospel accounts of divorce and what Paul does with it. They're different. But I don't know how much good that would do. My personal, I don't have one view on divorce.
Exactly. That's kind of what I hoped I was kind of getting at.
I don't have one view on divorce.
Yeah.
I don't. So you'd have to give me a certain context of whatever situation is going on. Because I would hope that what Christians are doing is thinking theologically and contextually about things and asking the Holy Spirit to speak through one another and through the text about certain situations. But yeah, I understand the question, and yeah, they are different accounts. So, but that's all I'll say for now, because this opens up a bigger discussion, as Ethan said. Any more comments?
Yeah. Hello, Rob with Sentinel Apologetics. I see you in the chat, but
hey, Rob.
Obviously, your question is a joke, so we're probably not all related to marriage between Yahweh and I don't even really know how to say the name, but like Asherah. So, yeah, I'm assuming. Clearly a joke. Travis, yeah, I'd probably agree. I like your thoughts on inclusivism. Oh, nice. Yeah, that like a lot of the... Yeah, I think the thing actually like that I hadn't said before that I mentioned when we answered that question was just that like I think a lot of the things that lead people towards universalism are on the right, or inclusivism are on the right track. I just, hop off the train when it gets to how people are actually saved.
Is John doing his PhD soon? I need a frenemy in the academy. Unfortunately, no, I'm not. I don't know if that'll ever happen. After watching my wife go through this process, I'm not super psyched about it. What I do hope to do is keep writing books. My book with Douglas will be coming out hopefully in late this year, early next year. But I really want to focus on that stuff and also this sort of this channel, and like this is where I see what I've, the education that I've gotten. This is where I see it being applied. But I also don't want to say that I'll never do it. At the moment, I'm not that interested in it. I applaud those who are, and we need more people like you, Nick, in the Academy doing great work on Paul. Your book on Paul's amazing. Yeah, you're wrong, but I love you. Same to you.
Yeah, it's always really nice to have people you can actually disagree with and have, like.
But we also agree on a lot of stuff. Like,
for sure.
The Romans 5 stuff. Like,
yeah,
we agree on a lot of apocalyptic stuff. We disagree on sort of universalism stuff, but that's not even really that related to Pauline studies precisely. I don't think.
Yeah,
I think
as far as it
pretty
comes
much
to Paul,
read Paul the same.
You're right.
Yeah. And then obviously Romans 1-3, but that's most people don't agree with me on that.
Most people are wrong.
Yeah. Well, yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's good knowing people who are wanting to do good, careful biblical studies, who also think that God is real. Who and who make that a huge part of their life, who've worked in ministry and like they want to talk about God. And like that's great stuff. And
it really seems it is a little strange that how like rare that is.
Yeah, and so I applaud Nick
for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
JB keeps bringing up. Oh, what's that? Whatever. We can really quick. JB, he's brought it up a couple times, and it's this whole Apocalypse of Peter thing.
No, I haven't yet. And you sent me a clip from.
I forget who it was.
Bart Ehrman said something about this. I haven't looked into this. I need to because it's really interesting to me.
Yeah.
Because the Apocalypse of Peter is not normally understood to be a universalistic text.
Have you read it, actually?
I have. Well, I've read there are different kind of to speak colloquially, different kind of versions of it.
Is that kind of true for a lot of non-canonical?
Some of them, yeah. But this in particular would be really interesting to look at. And I need to talk to Laura about this too to get her thoughts. But yeah, thanks for the reminder. I'll definitely look into this, JB. So thanks. Okay. If a layperson that has to pay attention to 3 to 5 contemporary Paul scholars, who would you recommend? Okay, so layperson. Okay, I think.
Yeah, this is a really interesting question. I mean, I think I can throw out a few thoughts too, and you can say.
Yeah, I mean,
I think it's impossible to leave off NT Wright off the list because I do think he's an important person too.
Sure, I think you have to engage with Wright for sure. The hard thing is layperson. Like, what kind of layperson? Is it someone who's already kind of familiar with stuff going on? Is it? I think you do have to engage with Wright. I do think you have to engage with.
Who would you say from apocalyptic camp? I guess.
As far as lay engagement, I think you got to go with Paul and Apostles' Journey on that. So that's Doug Campbell. But again, like it's okay. So educated layperson, that might change my answer then, because then I would go with Lou Martin, Theological Issues in the Letters of Paul. I think you've got to go there.
And we have a video on Apocalypse here where you talk about one of the essays.
Yeah, I think that's such an important collection of essays. Theological Issues is really important.
That's what I was about. Nick brought up Beverly Gaventa.
Yeah, I think Gaventa on Romans is good. I think that's good. I mean, there's some. The issue is that there's so many. I mean, even Gordon V. I love Gordon V. on Paul. Absolutely. Jamie Davies, also like Barclay. Yeah, just what, like any of these would be great places to start, really. But I really do think that if you really want to get to the heart of Paul, I think going through Martin first of all is going to be the way to go. Because I think he really gets you to the heart of what Paul's doing. I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, and I think an interesting way to kind of reframe the question and to say less about like individual scholars, but just to like get an understanding of like Lutheran perspective, new perspective, apocalyptic, and Paul within Judaism, like kind of breaking Paul's scholarship into those sort of categories and having, if you have an understanding of what each one of those categories is, I think you're on the right track to begin sort of diving into actual scholarship, if that's kind of the question.
Yeah, absolutely. And then like that'll give you kind of a sense of what's going on in the landscape now, which is like well beyond sort of new perspective, old perspective debates. We have the minority of scholars who are sort of doing apocalyptic stuff. We've got Paul within Judaism. We have people like Nick, who's actually kind of doing stuff within both Paul within Judaism and also apocalyptic, doing working on interesting stuff within that kind of dynamic as well, which is really important. And I think once you understand the lay of the land, then you can get a sense of kind of really what's going on now. But yeah, I just think a good jumping off point would be really anything by Martin. I would start there to get a sense of new perspective stuff. Jimmy Dunn, N.T. Wright, really. Paul within
Bird.
Judaism. What's that?
Michael Bird is also like new perspective guy.
I think Bird is beyond that. I mean, Nick can comment on that. I think Bird is doing different sorts of.
Okay. Well, yeah, I haven't engaged with his stuff enough to say so.
Yeah, no. And then also like for Paul within Judaism, I mean, Paula Fredrickson, it would be a great person to go to for that, to get a handle on that. Yeah, I mean, there's so many within the camp now, like Matthew Novenson, Matthew Thiessen. Yeah, Bird is, you're exactly, Bird's sort of eclectic, really, within this. But yeah, Matthew Novenson, Matt Thiessen, folks like that are doing more of the Paul within Judaism stuff as well.
Amy Jill Levine, or was she considered a Paul within Judaism person?
Not sure.
Yeah, I just know, like, I've seen a little bit of her stuff on like Mythfish, and I've never.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know much of her stuff in this relation. I do know some of her other stuff. But yeah, I think once you can get a sense of the lay of the land, then that can give you, how to handle what's going on. So yeah.
They apparently talked to Nick Quinn about this question because he had a lot of. Apparently, just asked Nick Quinn this question because he had a lot of good responses in the chat too. That we just kind of.
Yeah, Levine is definitely more gospel focused. Yeah, Mark Nanos, another Paul within Judaism guy. Yep,
that's what I'm saying. He's got all our answers, so just ask him. Don't ask us.
Yeah, we don't know what the hell we're talking about.
But watch our channel while you ask Nick. So this is perfect.
We'll just have an Ask Nick portion where like you can ask us stuff, and I just forget things, and then Nick types it in. I'm like, yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, that'll be our new episode. Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah. I saw something. Dead air.
Dead air.
Yeah. Reading through. I think. Yeah, I don't know if anybody too, if you're in the chat right now too, if you have thoughts, even if it's not necessarily a question for right now, but maybe a larger question that maybe we could touch on in a podcast or something going forward. It'd be interesting if Oh, yeah, that's what I wanted to say. I knew there was something. I've been talking to Travis. We should,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sure you'd be open. Get him back on to just kind of talk about like how reading the church fathers has kind of changed his understanding of Christianity and stuff. Because he's been really doing a lot with like Maximus the Confessor specifically, which and we have like a group chat, a Facebook chat, and we talk on there and stuff. And he's really had some like really interesting stuff to say. So I think it'd be cool to kind of get him back on to talk about that, since becoming more involved in the Eastern Orthodox Church. It's really, it's been interesting to see his understanding of theology kind of shift. And church fathers are super interesting. It's not a topic I've studied as much as I'd like to. It seems like something that's really interesting, but since like the past year has been insane, it seems kind of crazy for me to start something kind of from the ground up. What is open theism and why do some people not like it? Because it sucks.
I don't really want to go into this tonight.
Yeah, that's
We've
fine.
gone for 50 minutes, but this. Why don't you write this down, Ethan? Because I've talked about open theism, I think.
Yeah, we did like a long time ago on a video on my channel, like is when we specifically did. But I think it'd be cool to talk about.
I think a lot of people like it, but I think it's very, very problematic once you get into what it's actually doing theologically. Especially if you think that God is actually active and involved in the world, and a God who loves you and cares for you as revealed in Christ. I think it's hard to avoid the problem. Anyway, mark that down. Maybe we can do a podcast on open theism and just talk through things. But thank you, Reagan, for this. I don't want to seem dismissive at all.
Yeah, one simple thing I could give. One like big like mark against open theism that I think kind of shoots it down right from the start for me is that like I can't get around like the idea that God wasn't sure what was going to happen before he created the world, and like just say, you know what, it's worth a shot, and like the Holocaust happens and it's like, oh jeez, stuff like that. Like I just can't. To me, I struggle to get around the idea that doesn't make God just evil for even creating in the first place, because it could have been even worse. So like I'm not sure. It seems weird, but there's also a lot of problems. There's that essay that I remember reading it too when we prepared for the conversation we had on my channel, because it was that Travis was debating open theist, to bring Travis up again, and that's why I was like interested in a little reading. And there was that essay, I think it was Bruce McCormack, and how it like compared open theism to classical theism in this like interesting way, which
it's parasitic on classical theism. It's using the same concepts, it's just defining them differently.
It's not like an opposite end of the spectrum, which I thought was really interesting.
But I mean, McCormack's great on this stuff, so
for sure. There's a good one. John, do you know where you can find lyrics to Beckett's album?
Great question. As a member of Beckett, off the top of my head, I don't know. I know they're on the back of the album itself, like the physical album. I don't know if we have the lyrics on our Spotify when you play the music. I haven't checked, because sometimes, I don't know if you've been on the Spotify app where you can, they'll activate the lyrics simultaneously with the music. I'm not sure if we had done that or not. Shoot. Man, I'm just a bad member of this band.
I'm assuming it's not on Spotify, or else I probably wouldn't ask that question.
The lyrics? Let's see. Let's do a Google.
But that's what I'm checking right now.
Dead air.
Yeah, no, it's not.
Damn.
No.
All right, so I guess the answer is no. And I'm sorry, but I will tell you, Reagan, we are working on another album right now, and I will make sure that when we do this, we will have lyrics available online for people because people want to know. So we're working on another album that should be out at some point. Maybe by the end of the year. We'll see. But yeah, it's in the works. Okay.
There was a question right above that about Robin Faith Walsh. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I haven't read.
I know who she
her
is.
book. I've seen her.
I haven't read her.
Vision.
No, I haven't read her. Well, in the Gospels, I know what I do know from what I do know about her is that she has a kind of interesting take on the Gospels. But no, I don't have really anything to say that would be helpful about that. But good question. Maybe that's something.
Yeah, I see people in the chat seem to think I said like Beckett is not on Spotify, which it is.
Beckett is on Spotify.
Yeah, I was saying the lyrics are not on Spotify.
Yes, right.
Yeah, so all you people in here think I'm making fun of John. I'm not. No. Because
that yeah. No.
Yeah, see.
No, it is on Spotify.
Yeah, that's not what I said.
Yeah. We have a friggin' blue check mark on Spotify or whatever.
Oh, nice. It doesn't seem very hard to get, to be fair.
No, you don't have to pay for it though.
At least you're not paying.
Unlike some websites.
Yeah, you're not paying Elon Musk, so.
Are we going to SBL? We're too poor to probably make it this year. I don't know. I know that I don't think Laura. I don't think she's heard back about. She submitted one paper to something relevant to New Testament studies because she's really excited about other stuff at the moment. I don't know if that's her paper's been accepted. I doubt it at this point, this late on. I'm sure she'll be there. I don't think I'm going to go. Yes.
Oh, this is cool.
Dude, what did
yes, that's I didn't.
We do dunk on each other.
Yeah.
We've really never done it on
yeah, I actually didn't that time. So I'm sure I have on
your music sucks.
Yeah. Michael, if God talk has to be centered around Jesus, isn't our talk about Jesus in some way subjective as well? This is a really interesting question that definitely is not able to be answered quickly, and something that if people are familiar with Samuel Watkinson, I feel like we've had this John and him have basically talked for hours about this exact thing. Like his kind of pushback against foundation, or his pushback against your pushback on foundationalism and all that kind of stuff is kind of similar to this question. But
yeah,
I don't know if you have anything to say quickly.
I mean, sure. In some ways, it's subjective in terms of the reception of this. So we really need, when we're thinking about something being centered around Christ, God talk, we're talking about a revelation that is coming from God. So the object and subject of this revelation is God, fundamentally. It's coming to you. Okay. So of course we're processing this through our capacities as people, right? As people who are also in the bondage of sin. So it's going to be refracted in certain ways that aren't entirely sort of accurate. So we need a certain kind of epistemic humility as well within this. At the same time, that doesn't mean we can't say that it being centered on God and God's revelation in Christ, that this should make us kind of doubt that it's actually arriving in our midst and actually doing some work on us and healing us and transforming us and all of that. So in some sense, sure, it is subjective in the sense that we're subjects, and any sort of knowledge is going to be subjective. Is it purely subjective? No. As you're indicating, it's not purely subjective. We're not just making this stuff up and just saying, like, I choose that this is the way that I'm going to go with the truth about things. No. The main claim is that it's coming from a revelation to us and it's impressing us. Okay? That's the claim. And what I would say is, yes, it is going to be in some way subjective. But why is that a problem? As long as our experience of that revelation is trying to, at the same time and through our process of trying to understand that revelation, we're always constantly trying to attend the best we can to the content of that revelation, which is coming through Jesus Christ and by the Spirit. Okay? We have to constantly go back to what that revelation is doing and how it's pressing in upon us, and also impressing us as true. Okay? So that's what I would say in brief on that. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. It does. Yeah. I mean, I think I think it's, I'm not sure how I think you said it very well. So any sort of talk is going to be in some sense subjective. So.
Yeah, but the issue is here with God talk is we need, like, without, how did Alan Torrance say this? Without the revelation of God in Jesus Christ, we're always just going to be talking about God talk.
Mm-hmm.
It's God talk. And when we have the revelation of God, which brings with it the vocabulary, the subject, the object, the analogies that we need to work from to do theology, at that point we're doing God talk. If and only if that revelation is actually present and active. Otherwise, we're doing God talk.
Yeah, and I
think
it's
this sort of stage.
Yeah, and
an additional stage, right?
And when you're like hearing someone else talk about God, like you can know if it's like God talk or God talk, basically. If you like, because you're like attending to these exact same revelation, like yourself, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So like when you can discern whether or not like the things people are saying are correct or not, if they line up with the same revelation. You know, Jesus is not different for different people. So,
right.
I mean, in some sense, like meets people where they are, but whatever. This is why I didn't want. Yeah,
no, you're
like,
fine.
Yeah, I know. Like this gets very hard.
I mean,
to, like,
Christ
use
isn't going to be different. God is not going to be different.
Yeah,
our experience might have different sort of refractions given where we are located in space and time and all of that. That's fine. That's where subjectivity comes in.
Exactly. I think just the conversation we're having right here kind of explains what's going on, right? That like
it's complicated, but
there is some subjectivity and like convolutedness when trying to explain these things.
But the reason why we emphasize the revelation of God in Christ is because we need we that's going to be the control on our God talk, not the other way around. It's not. We're talking about God, and what we say about God is determinative of what this discourse actually is. It's actually God. It's the other way around. God interrupts. God shows up. God brings with God's self the way to speak about accurately who God is.
I agree.
Boom. Problem solved. All right.
Yeah, seems like we reached the end. We went for like just right at an hour, which is.
I'm surprised.
Yeah, I appreciate all the people asking questions.
For sure.
We just like ran through a few really cool different topics, which helps. Like doing stuff like this too helps kind of understand like what people are thinking about that watch our channel and stuff. So that's definitely interesting, and helps us kind of know if the things we're talking about other people are interested or they want us to talk about something different, which we won't listen to you. We'll talk about what we want, but this is cool. I appreciate all the people in the chat for sure.
Just real quick, this is exactly right. Revelation is a veiled, unveiled thing. This is Bart, really. Always above us, so our understanding of Jesus has to be renewed. Yeah, exactly. It's always it's always being renewed under the pressure of that veiled unveiling, right? That's exactly right. I don't have a problem with that. It's a good way of putting it. Thanks, Jesse.
Yeah, I appreciate them leaving comments and whatnot on so many of our videos. I have not. Reagan asked us about this book, and I have not, but
I don't know. I have read Sergei Bulgakov, but I haven't read that. Should we?
Yeah, yes. No, it sucks. He just read it and
it's just ass.
hated it and wanted to see if anybody else.
Yeah.
No,
right. Well, thanks everyone. This was really fun.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like we
were just doing this sort of impromptu, and I'm shocked that people actually showed up and asked questions. And
for sure,
I'm glad y'all did. So
yeah.
Thanks everybody. Thanks Nick. Thanks Jesse. Thanks Reagan.
Sure.
Who else should we thank?
Michael.
Jonathan
Becker. Yeah.
Me.
JB. We don't need to thank
me. JB.
Yeah, me. I was in there.
You. Magnum Opus. Rob at Sentinel Apologetics.
Sure.
Awesome. Cool.
And Travis.
Travis.
But yeah, cool. Thanks everybody. And with that, this has been Apocalypse Here.
Christianity you can live with. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.